Today it's my pleasure to introduce to you Peter Wiehl, who was part of the class of 1972. After Taft, he went to Colgate University. He's a printmaker, sculptor, painter, and filmmaker. Along with the paintings, drawings, and sculptures, there are films on display in the gallery of some of his performance pieces. A man on fire doing jumping jacks. Arrows crashing through glass. The man I've met this week is committed to experiment. His work is thoughtful and fine. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Peter Wiehl.
Thank you, Luetta. Welcome, everybody. It's been a fun week for me as well. I'd like to thank the Rockwell family for doing this fellowship, I guess you'd call it. And Taylor Rockwell is here today, classmate of mine. It's the reason I'm standing here in front of you. So thank you, Taylor. Before we get started with the artwork, I thought I'd share some. I've got a letter from Taft School dated 1971. It's got some notes about your things. So the first one I'll quote is, yours was a disappointing exam, signed Lance Otten. The next one was, you did outstanding work, Peter, throughout the whole of the course. I think you have a feeling for art. At least it would seem so after reading your papers, Mark Potter. So I just wanted to let you know I've been in these seats. My interest in art started here, and from here we'll go into the work. This first piece is called Cardinal Fires. I wanted to set 4 fires on the beach. It's timed with the tides. This is in San Francisco in 1975. So I got a cord of wood, threw it down. There's the tide going out. There's the first log on the beach. More logs on the beach. Tide's going further out. 4 stacks of wood, starting to set the fires. They kept burning. There's the 4 fires. This entire piece took about 12 hours. And at the end, I made a little poem called Cardinal Fires. There's the 4 fires. This slide is special. It's my first exhibit. I was in San Francisco in a group show called A Night at the Reno Hotel. After that, I did a planetarium show in Foothills College. I wasn't attending the college. I went around to different planetariums. I wanted to run a planetarium at full speed to see if I could make a month become an hour. So I was interested in speeding up time. The soundtrack, you can see the sine wave, that's the tides going up and down over the course of 24 hours. You can see here that I condensed the time. So 1 minute was 8 seconds, or 1/8 of a second. 1 hour was 1 minute. 720 hours, 30 days, 1 month, 1 hour. So it was a great experiment. Most of the people just fell asleep in the planetarium because, a lot of time's going by. But it was a fun show and interesting for me. The soundtrack here we used, contacted a lot of people from NASA. I was able to get original recordings of pulsars from the Arecibo laboratory. I was able to get Pioneer recordings, and I put it all together and had a score behind this show. This next thing, I got interested in archery, so I said, well, how do you stop an arrow in midair? So I was doing a lot of target practice, and then I built this contraption out of cloth, and I was able to stop the arrows in midair. So the name of that was Arrow Catcher. And there you have a cloth version. That was the first version. It was 1977. At the end, it was 16 feet long. This particular exhibit was in San Francisco, and I was able to hang up the entire piece and have them falling from the sky, so to speak. And so that was this exhibit, Southern Exposure Gallery, San Francisco. Then I made a film of it. I used high-speed motion cameras. I was shooting through plexiglass this time. And the film is in the gallery. You'll be able to see it there. But basically, you can see the plexiglass break, the arrows come through, and there's lots of reflections. And it's we used, at the time, they were called high-speed military cameras, and they would go to something called 6,000 frames per second. Normal is 24 frames per second. So we were able to stretch time this time instead of condense it, and by a factor of 300 or so. After that, it went into, this is at the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. This is a glass version in front of an audience, the live thing. So this was this performance. So as you can see, the arrows just hitting, the first arrows are hitting the glass here. It's slowly making its way through. Each arrow would create a hole, and then the next arrow could go a little farther, hit the next pane. So slowly fill it up. Then this is at the end of the performance. Everyone came to look at it. And then here's some of the close-ups of the finished piece. This next one's called Jumping Jacks on Fire. We had a stuntman come out to Arizona. I worked as a film set technician at the time. I was able to borrow the film camera from the feature film. And we made a film out here of the stuntman doing jumping jacks. So here he is. It's at sunset in Superior, Arizona. This is 1986. There's a film of this as well in the gallery. Then after the fire, I started working first in steel, then in bronze. This is a bronze piece made at my studio in New Milford, Connecticut in 1991. And this is kind of a river piece. It's called Euphrates. And at the time of the first Gulf War, there was, in the news accounts, it just said that the Euphrates River was frozen, and that stuck with me. So I did the patina in kind of a white, frosty color. And that's that piece. This is 8 feet wide. There's a similar piece to it called Tigress in the gallery that you can look at. This one's called Gravity's Rainbow, based on the Pynchon novel. And this is at the Long Wharf. This was for the Special Olympics. They had a sculpture show in 1996 in New Haven. So this is installed along the Long Wharf Drive overlooking the New Haven Harbor. The patinas are done with chemicals applied with a hot torch. And that's that piece. This one's called Triptych. This was inspired after a trip to Europe, looking at some of the medieval panel paintings. I think it was in the Halls Museum. I saw one in Holland and a couple other museums on a trip. And so it kind of wings out a little bit. So it's a triptych, like a traditional altarpiece. It's 9 feet across. It's about 6 feet tall. This was something called Hemisphere. This to me was like, I guess in astronomy, there's a point where two stars kind of feed each other. So that's kind of my version of it. This was actually a commission, so it ended up in this pond here in Redding, Connecticut. I went on a sailing trip, and we were docked after sailing from Cape Cod to Maine, and the water was kind of lapping up, and it was filled with kelp. And I said, well, isn't that interesting? And the sun was hitting it, so I started thinking about waves and kelp colors, and so I started making waves out of bronze. And these are done, these are poured on sheet steel. It's poured just in a little ladle where one pour goes on to another, and it welds itself. And then I use different brands of bronze. The white bronze for the white caps is a manganese bronze, and the other is traditional silicon bronze. So all these are done. They're done without assistance. They're done without wax. They're done without models. It's just direct pouring. This is 3 bronze waves. This is in the gallery. So it's taking that idea, stretching it out a little bit. And then from there, I spent a year making this piece called the Sea of Bronze, where I did 30 of them. And this exhibited in 1998 in Chelsea, New York. And so it's my version of the original kelp beds. I worked with glass a little bit. Right down the road here in Morris, Connecticut, there was Larry Lavolsi was a glass artist. I worked at his studio for a while, and so he had the glass and I had the bronze. We tried to make something as a collaboration, and this is the result. Glass and bronze really don't mix. It kind of cracked a little bit, but it refers back to some of my earlier glass pieces. Then I got rid of the bronze and just left the traces of the bronze casting in the glass. So there's those. And while I was casting glass, they use graphite to cast in furnaces for glass, because graphite could stand the heat the most. So then I got interested in graphite, and this piece is about 5 feet wide, and it's on graphite foil, and I just took a torch to it, and it bubbled up a little, so I was able to make a drawing with heat on this graphite foil. So these are drawings, technically. From there, I figured out how to bond different graphite powders onto carbon fiber frames. These are in the gallery as well. I'm not sure which one this is. And I did a series of these. There's a mountain. They're all kind of based on outer space photographs. This one, I believe, is in the gallery. Twilight. This one I call the surface of the sun. Then after working with just the powders for a while, got involved with glass frit, which gave me some color. After getting a little bored with black and white, we went to color. There's some more of those. This one's called an aurora. And after all the color, I said, well, why not paint? Every time I go to a museum, I admire the paintings more than the sculpture. So I said, why don't I do it myself after 30 years of making sculpture? So I started painting. This is an afternoon sky. This is a cloudscape, probably around 2007 or so. This one's called Tempest. This is just a local thunderstorm. I'm sure you're all familiar with the June thunderstorms in Connecticut. This one's called Thermal. This one's called Yonder. And this one I was flying back and forth to Florida to see my parents, so I spent a lot of time in the sky. And so this is, the clouds are below and the clouds are above. And that is the end of the pictures. If you have questions, you can have questions. I'll be in the gallery after the lecture and whatever else. Thank you very much.